Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Thursday's edition, and we're broadcasting from Louisville, Kentucky, and from Long Island, New York. Look at that beach scene in back of you. Jeffrey, welcome to Schaftlein Report. Happy to have you back on a Thursday.
Good to be back, and this is a better host than we had last week.
Well, the massive improvement was warranted, I guess.
My wife will say that this week is not as good as last week, but she's my wife.
Well, anyhow, I tell you, it was interesting. In prepping for the show today, it's uncanny how many topics we have to cover today. So let's get started. Jeffrey,
you got it.
What do you make of this special master talk that Trump is pushing and the pushback that we're getting from the DOJ? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I thought he was being a little kinky when I first heard it, this master stuff. It was a master slave thing. But, all it is somebody who has no contact with anybody look through the stuff and see if it's what everyone's saying it is. It's basically getting an arbitrator. And I think they don't want it because they're hiding something.
Yeah, I agree with you. The former special counsel to the president, John Radcliffe, said that in his opinion, the FBI did not get what they were looking for. I don't know what they were looking for. Nobody does. Well, no one outside the FBI. But this thing is really bubbling over. And depending upon which side of the partisan divide you're on, Trump believes it's making him stronger. I'm not really in that camp. And I know you're not either. But this thing is turning into a real mess. I mean, when they put that, quote, evidence out, and it was almost like the old Russian propaganda where they put stuff out on a table and said, look, here's the proof.
And that was in his office. I mean, how do you put, if they think it's top secret, how do you put it across the floor where you can see the covers that say top secret?
Yeah.
I think they just had the covers and they just slipped something in paper.
I think the American people are concerned about this. I mean, obviously, Democrats want to see it play out. Republicans are livid about it. I don't know. We'll see how the polling goes. Trump's support may have gone up a little bit, but at the end of the day, his legal problems continue to mount. And this certainly is not helping the situation, albeit I hope that special master is appointed so we can really get to the bottom of what's going on here, Jeffrey.
Even the DOJ says they're not going to have any real action until after the election.
Well,
if nothing happens till after the election, it's going to go away.
Yeah, let's hope that happens. Let's hope we can take them at their word on that. All right, listen, let's move on to some things here. Let's talk about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now. My goodness. The counteroffensive has started. All indications are the Ukrainians are doing quite well. Russian casualties in this war, Jeffrey, are now up to 48,000 dead. I mean, the Ukrainians look like they could take back that port city. And if they do, that's going to free up opportunities to the sea. Jeffrey, the Russians, you continue to read stories about they're plagued by alcoholism, troop morale low. Every day you hear stories about, hundreds of Russians being killed, munitions depots blown up. We're only getting one side of it. We're not getting all the information on the other piece. But Jeffrey, this is not going according to plan with the Russians, and the counteroffensive does appear to be effective.
What the scary part is the nuclear plant.
Yeah,
because they're worried about another meltdown, and Chernobyl was in Ukraine. It wasn't in Russia.
Right.
So, I mean, they've gone through it already. And, one screw up and there's going to be a fallout.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, the UN inspectors they've reached the plant and they are going to inspect it. Boy, that's a job that's a tough job. But
Russia's going to tell them where they can go.
Yeah, I mean, the Russians actually had the gall to blame the Ukrainians for attack. I mean, that's stupid. I mean, it's beyond stupid. But yeah, that's a big deal. So again, the Russian casualties continue to mount.
They're
Problem,
running out of not the big stuff, but they're running out of bullets.
yeah, and the United States and NATO continue to supply arms to the Ukrainians. So again, I just believe this thing is not going as planned. And it's really interesting. Did you see the story about the head of Lukoil, who at one point he had criticized? He was a former Putin ally. He had criticized Putin. He ended up like a lot of other sort of wealthy Russians that publicly criticized Putin. And who jumps out of a 6th floor window? I mean, if you're in the hospital, I mean, he appears to have joined the long list of Putin former supporters who turned adversary. The Russians, they killed the perpetrator and his family. So I mean, this really is
that Russia would do something like that.
Shocking, isn't it? I mean, my God, supposedly the guy was sick, but I don't know. To me,
not sick enough to jump out a window.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of that old 1960s movie when the British were going to have to pay an insurance claim, and the board of the insurance company denied it, and then someone paid a visit to them, and they ended up falling off a ledge of a hotel. I mean, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. Also,
that's
along
the way
the line,
Putin works.
Yeah, it is the way it works. He either imprisons his political opponents, he drugs them, trying to kill them, or they get killed from some nefarious method, and the pattern stays the same. I mean, it's no change here. So the Russian people may be starting to oppose some of this war, but Putin's clearly in control. Bad situation. All right, let me move on to some stuff outside of Russia. Let's talk about China a little bit here. Boy, I tell you what, bad day on Wall Street for a couple of U.S. chip companies that export chips to China. The United States government has prohibited high-end chips from going to China. This affects NVIDIA, Advanced Micro Devices. The government is basically saying you're going to have to get a license from the U.S. government to sell these high-end sophisticated chips, not gaming chips, but some of the high sophisticated chips. Jeffrey, we appear to be in an economic, let's just call it, I don't want to call it a war yet, but certainly an economic challenge with China, and chips are at the forefront of this.
Well, it goes two ways. We use their chips and they use ours. And by cutting off, us giving them chips or selling them chips, he's also hurting our economy. And I know he would never do something like that, like shutting off the oil. But I mean, there are people that make a lot of money from that.
Yeah, there's no question about it. It's certainly not playing over well on Wall Street. NVIDIA's stock was down about $14. AMD's was down $5. So, and it's certainly painful for investors, even though like a company like NVIDIA, they only get about 25% of their sales from Asia and about maybe 20 from China. So I don't know. It's another salvo when you add in Pelosi going to Taiwan, other U.S. representatives going there, the chip issue. Things are percolating between the two countries. There's no doubt.
Well, they got lucky because I was hoping that when Pelosi went to Taiwan, she'd be forced to stay there.
I know you were. Well, all right. Speaking of politics, what do you make about our esteemed president going on the air tonight? And he's basically going to lambaste Republicans, the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, as fascist. And he even referred to Ron DeSantis as a semi-fascist. Jeffrey, this smacks to me of a desperate man looking at a desperate situation. The media is doing their best to cover up for these fallacies, but he's going to go on national TV and lambaste not conservative Republicans, not Mitt Romney Republicans, not quote normal Republicans, but basically half the party, which is the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. Your thoughts?
First of all, I take it personally.
Should.
Because I'm a MAGA Republican, and that you don't have to be a Trump supporter to be a MAGA Republican.
Right.
It's America first. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I got family that died in the Holocaust. He's calling me a Nazi.
I know.
When I say to somebody fascist, the first thing they think of is Hitler.
Yeah.
So how dare he call me a Nazi?
there's a lot of Americans feel exactly like you do, Jeffrey. You know, this is right out of the Saul Alinsky playbook. If things are going bad for you domestically, politically, attack your opponents, regardless if there's any reason to do it or not. There is no rhyme or reason for this speech tonight. It is a purely political act by a vicious, desperate politician.
Wasn't he the guy that said, I'm going to be a unifier?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this for the last year and a half. We knew he wouldn't be. We knew he wasn't competent for the job. We knew why he got elected. I mean, this is literally, as Jeremiah Wright said, the chickens are coming home to roost in a bad way, because this guy should not be president. He is, and we have to tolerate it. But I got news for you. Despite the media's best effort, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, he is going to get drummed when the midterm elections come out. People are ticked off. They're ticked off about this student loan debacle. They're ticked off about inflation. They're ticked off about what's going on the border. We're going to talk about that.
Did you hear what happened yesterday?
Among which stories?
He filed to run again.
Oh, no, I didn't catch that. Okay, great. Okay. No surprise there. He said he's going to do it. But the interesting thing about it is this: while he's continued to basically dodge the issues, okay, these bills that Congress passed, some were bipartisan, they're doing nothing on the independent and Republican side to help his poll numbers. Quinnipiac came out and big headline: Biden up in poll numbers. Well, that was about as misleading headline as you could have. Yes, he's up from an artificial low number of 31, which you and I said was an outlier. Quinnipiac poll out today: Biden approval 40%, disapproval 52%. Jeffrey, among independents, 55% of independents disapprove of the job he's doing. 92% of Republicans disapprove of the job. He only got a bump up among Democrats by 11 points. That's why his Democratic numbers went up as they did. I never believed that 31 number. You and I said it was an outlier. We said it was probably somewhere.
Well, the other thing is, the only really important number is the independent.
Yes, correct. And
because the Democrats are going to vote Democratic. The Republicans, so that's just turnout. But if the independents hate you, you're going to lose.
Well, 83% of Democrats supporting, that's up from 72 last month. But again, those Democrats may be coming home. That's fine. But if you're continuing to lose the independents, as you correctly pointed out, again, this election will not bode well for him. And again, let's talk about why this is happening. Look at what Greg Abbott's doing down in Texas, okay? You got to love it. First, he shipped the illegals to Washington. Then he shipped them to New York. Then when New York basically said, Uncle, I can't take it anymore, now he's shipping them to Chicago. And what did these clowns in Chicago? Oh, my God, it's a racist deal. He's shipping illegals to Chicago.
And these are all people that are sanctuary cities.
That's exactly right.
They say, hey, we welcome them. Well, if they welcome them, take them. It's not Abbott's fault. There's nothing written that Texas has to be responsible for.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, the interesting thing is, we've talked about this before, the federal government's flying people out at night under cover of darkness to different northern cities. So all Abbott's doing is helping the federal government resettle people out of Texas into sanctuary cities. And look, is it any surprise, Jeffrey, that these sanctuary cities, these blue cities, are besieged by crime, the murders, the horrific stories? I mean, 5 people killed in Oakland the other day, 350 people murdered in Philadelphia this year. We could talk Baltimore, Los Angeles, on and on, San Francisco. It doesn't matter. Whatever blue city where there's Democrats, the crime rate is escalating, and people are going to vote based upon both their pocketbooks and their crime come November.
Well, at least, the nation's #1 crime fighting service is spending its time raiding president's house.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
But I grew up, the FBI was like the most incredible crime fighting organization in the world.
Right.
And now they're a joke.
Yeah, the public trust is really eroded. And let's hope after Republicans take back Congress and they have some hearings so we can get to the bottom of this stuff, credibility can be restored at the FBI, because that's important. They had been the premier law enforcement agency, and that needs to return, to what it was.
Despite the fact the head of the FBI used to wear dresses.
Well, they're going to have to I know they're going to have to regain that confidence one way or another. But hey, let's move on to some other things here. You know, Jeffrey, we talk about these green energy policies, Green New Deal, et cetera. Jeffrey, the Green New Deal is not working out very well in Europe right now. I mean, Europe is going through a 500-year drought, the worst drought in 500 years. Rivers are drying up. You know, they ended up giving up their nuclear power voluntarily. Now, again, Trump warned them 3 years ago, you better do something about gas because you're too dependent upon Russia. Jeffrey, it's looking like a very problematic winter coming up in Europe as a result of these ridiculous green energy policies.
Did you hear what California did today?
Yes, I am aware of what happened in California.
Guys, what happened in California is that next summer we're going to be running low on energy. So don't plug in your car during the day. Now, this is the state that first said in another 10 years, you can't buy any, gas cars.
Let me correct you on one thing. It's not next summer. It's now.
Oh, it's now.
It's now. Gavin Newsom came out and basically gave a news conference, said for the next 5-6 days, we're going to go through extraordinary heat, which is true. And California is already in a drought, exceptional drought in certain parts of the state. It's going to be hot. And he has asked people with electric cars not to charge them up. That's happening today, Jeffrey. It's not a year from now.
I apologize.
Yeah, that's real life. That's what's going on. And look, California, the concern in California is that because enough cars would be charging, that the electrical grid would go down. And you cannot have an electrical grid go down if you're in the middle of a heat wave. Can you imagine that? I mean, that would be terrible.
You can't let it go down at any time.
Right.
Because then there's no refrigeration, there's no food, there's no delivery. I mean, and worse, there's no television.
Well, look what happened in Texas last summer when their electric grid failed. I mean, this is a big deal. So here we have California leading the charge for electric vehicles. And we've said it before. Okay, we don't have anything against electric vehicles, but the grid runs on coal, electricity, nuclear, oil, gas, all the above. And with the restrictions California's putting in, particularly on coal, nuclear, okay, it makes it tough. So California is going to be the poster child of Europe. We're going to do full speed ahead on Green New Deal. No gas-powered cars being sold after 2035. We'll see how long that thing lasts. But yeah.
Well, Washington State is doing it now.
Yeah.
And New Jersey is going to do it soon. And so is New York. And they're saying there's by the end of the year, there'll be a total of 13 states that'll be doing it.
It's going to be problematic. I can tell you that. Let me shift a little bit here to domestic politics. All right. We just talked about Biden's 40% approval rating. Jeffrey, are you aware that he has spent 40% of his time on vacation away from the White House? That's astounding. With all the problems this country's facing, the guy who campaigned from his basement, again, Republicans aren't surprised by this. We knew it would happen. But Jeffrey, he is getting criticized for spending 40% of his time away from the White House on vacation. You get the traditional, the president can work anywhere, it doesn't matter. You and I both know when they see this clown riding on a bike, falling over on a beach in Delaware, and he already has cognitive problems when he's at the White House, how confident are you he can be doing his job when he's not in the White House?
Well, how confident are you it's him that's doing the job?
Not at all. I've said for the last year, I believe the power brokers behind Biden are Susan Rice, domestic policy advisor, Ron Klain, chief of staff, Cedric Richmond, former congressman, very bright guy, advises Biden. And who else? Who knows?
And Blinken.
Yeah, Anthony Blinken, he's Secretary of State, of course. But yeah, who advises him on a daily basis? That's probably his triumvirate right there.
If I didn't show up at my job 40% of the time, I'd be not showing up 100% of the time because I'd be fired.
Yeah. No, it's a big problem. Now, look, we had a special election in Alaska last night. That was to fill the remaining term of a congressman who passed away. And Mary Teltola She won the special election. Why did she win it? Well, there was one Democrat in the race and two Republicans, and they had ranked choice voting, and the two Republicans, Sarah Palin among others, and the Palin's opponent from a well-known Alaska political family, they split the vote, and Peltola won. Now, she's only going to serve, a handful of months between now and January. So the election, those same three candidates are going to run again in November in a ranked choice voting. My opinion is, we only need to have one Republican running, and if he got more votes,
what can the party do about it?
I don't know what the party can do about it, but since Palin's Republican opponent got more votes than her, my opinion is she should drop out, so it's a one-on-one race. But that's probably not going to happen. Now, the Republican can still win, but in ranked choice voting, there's a lot to be desired about that. But again, Cook Political Report shifted that race from lean Republican to neutral, and that seems like a fair analysis, given that, one Democrat running against two Republicans and the Democrat won. Hardly a surprise if you have two Republicans in the race.
Plus, Alaska is a strong Republican state, and that's what makes me really crazy about the results.
Yeah, I just don't see a path for Palin here. If she's not going to win, again, it's not my place to tell a candidate who's putting their heart and effort into running to run, but it's clear to me that Alaskans appear to have had enough of Sarah Palin. Okay, when she was governor, and McCain tapped her, they lost, she quit as governor. That didn't really go over really well. So now she's trying to make a comeback. I don't see it happening. But anyhow, the voters in Alaska, they're going to sort that out. And in Pennsylvania, this doofus Fetterman, this guy that walks around wearing a hoodie all over the place, and came back from I guess he had a stroke. The guy looks like an absolute buffoon. He will not debate Oz. What is he so afraid of? He's debating.
Plus, he says he doesn't have the power in his body yet to debate, but he was seen at a big dinner yesterday.
Yeah, right.
So, he's taking the Biden method. Hang out in your basement.
This guy has political policies that would make Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren to the right of him. He's against voter ID. He's for everything Sanders and Warren stand for. But on the surface, you would think Pennsylvania is not ready for a radical leftist who walks around in a hoodie. Now,
worse, he wants to stop oil drilling.
Yeah, he does.
And what's the big industry in Pennsylvania?
That is, fracking's a big deal in Pennsylvania. It absolutely is. So I don't know. He's ahead by 4 to 5 points right now, but McConnell's leadership front is throwing money to Oz. I believe Republicans will step up. At the end of the day, that's a seat that would be nice for Republicans to defend because, Pat Toomey, a Republican senator, is vacating the seat. So if Oz doesn't win, that's going to be a +1 pickup for the Democrats.
There was a poll yesterday that showed Oz in front.
I didn't see that.
So the polls are all over the place.
They are all over the place. Well, one thing's obvious, the polls are tightening because about a month ago, Fetterman was up by 8 to 9 points on Oz. Now, let's say it's plus or minus Oz 1 to 2 to Fetterman +4. Let's call it on an average, probably Fetterman's up 2 or 3 points. Look, folks, with 75 days to go, that's going to be a very tight race. But that's one that we need to win because we certainly, to put a radical leftist in the Senate representing Pennsylvania who will vote with Sanders and Warren 100% of the time, I don't think the people in Pennsylvania need that.
Well, there's a radical leftist in Utah.
Well, okay. Help me out with that one.
Romney.
Well, I knew you were going to say that. I would look. You give me Romney.
Saying that the Republican Party needs a rhinoplasty.
Well, he may be, but he still votes with the Republican majority 90+% of the time. And anybody else who's a Democrat would vote against it 90% of the time. So I'll take a Romney 100 out of 100. Remember the old Ronald Reagan rule: "Thou shalt not speak ill about a fellow Republican." We haven't really been following that rule very well lately, and it has created created some issues. But anyhow, Jeffrey, another thing going on. Let's talk a little about this. The 1 year anniversary, Afghanistan passed this week, and as predicted, the Biden debacle. I mean, we're paying the price for that. Here in Afghanistan, an Afghanistan woman claims she was raped by a Taliban senior official. What happens? She gets arrested, and she's going to be penalized under Sharia law, and nothing happens to him. I mean, and go ahead, Jeffrey.
No, I'm saying, of course. And we still got people stuck there.
Yeah, we do. That's true. And again, how Biden can claim he's a champion for women when the Afghan women have just been absolutely brutalized, taken back, 6 centuries. It was pleasant to see some stories about some Afghans. I saw it on the news this week, an Afghan couple that had managed to escape with their 3 kids. They live outside DC. But again, that's not the norm. Most Afghan women, they can no longer go to school, and they have happened to them. What's happened to this woman? She accused an official of rape. She gets arrested. Now she's going to pay the penalty instead of him. I mean,
probably have to do the lashes thing.
Maybe, who knows?
What they usually didn't that once happen in Saudi Arabia? The same thing.
Yeah, it did. It's just, I mean, again, this just reminds us of the incompetency of the president. I mean, everything this guy touches is a disaster. I mean, I can go down the list. Oil prices are still high. They've come down 75 days. Yeah, I get that. Okay. But the cost already baked into goods. The rents are still high. Food prices are high. Inflation is still running north of 8%. I mean, that's happening. We have massive crime all over the place, particularly in our blue cities. 2 million people coming across the border. Jeffrey, I saw a stat the other day. There's enough fentanyl that came across that border, killing thousands of young Americans. It's actually brought down the average life expectancy of men and women in this country because young people are dying of fentanyl at a younger age.
I think the average is about 300 a day.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else that killed 300 kids a day, and again, it's kids.
Yeah,
it's children. So it should be more. I mean, not that I have any problem with adults, but it hurts more when it's kids.
Yeah,
and it's disgusting.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. The
articles are all about now people dying, families dying when they try to cross the Rio Grande.
Yeah, I see that too. It's heartwarming story. I mean, it's just really tough to see this stuff. And again, Jeffrey, the media is out there and they're saying, oh, hey, wait, this election's going to be different. The Democrats have a shot at keeping the House. No, they don't. They're not going to keep the House. Look, the margins may be thinner, as we talked about earlier in the week, where instead of winning 20 to 30 seats, Republicans now appear to be on the verge of winning maybe 15 to 25. You and I have said all along, we thought the number was going to be somewhere plus or minus of 20. I still stick by that. I think that's where it's going to be. That will still give the Republicans a clear majority in the House. The Senate, it could go either way. We've said that. But I mean, with all these policies that are just absolute disasters, to me, it's shocking the numbers aren't higher, and maybe that'll change as we get closer to the election.
Well, I think the Republicans have to do something different, okay? Because all I hear from them is we're going to investigate this, we're going to investigate that, we're going to impeach Biden.
That's a bad idea. We don't want to impeach Biden.
But you know what? If they want to talk about that, wait till after the election. They should be talking about what they want to do in the future, because the American families, they want to know how you're going to fix things. They don't care who you're going to investigate.
Elections are about the future, not about the past. And the best thing the Republicans could talk about now is things that they're going to help out to continue bringing down inflation, pass bills to increase law enforcement. I mean, Biden came out in a speech the other day and said, hey, we support the police. Okay, that's a lie. We know that the base of their party is anti-police. But if you really believe that, then a Republican House elected in November can pass sweeping legislation to help the police. We can pass legislation to help bring down inflation. We can stop this ridiculous government spending, which is fueling this inflation. I mean, look.
Well, if you believe they like the police, then you believe that I'm gonna wake up tomorrow with a full head of hair.
You
And
know,
I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell them.
Republicans should be talking every day
That's
about
right.
the inflation rate, about crime in the cities, the drugs coming across the border, the illegals coming across the border, and things they can do to help. Elections are about forward looking, not backward looking.
And a great way to differentiate themselves, because all the Democrats are talking about is Republicans stink and Trump, Trump, Trump. I don't know if you've noticed, but he hasn't been president since
people will,
for a year and a half.
That's almost a get out the vote message to the hardcore Democratic base. That's not going to fly with independents. You know, the only good news I could see coming out, weekly jobless claims came in at a 2-month low. Now, let me give you the good news, bad news scenario. The good news, yeah, that's good news. The bad news, when that unemployment report comes out tomorrow, there's a chance we could show a downtick in unemployment rate down to 3.4 or 3.3%. Look, if that's the case, then the Federal Reserve will definitely be raising interest rates 50 to 75 basis points at the next meeting. They're going to keep rates higher longer than Wall Street expects. Look, the stock market's been down 4 consecutive days this week and was down on Friday of last week. So 5 straight days of downward. Look, you got to take Powell what he says. He is going to raise rates to snuff out inflation. And if we keep having wage growth at the level that it is and unemployment at this level, the Fed's never going to come out and say they want more unemployment, but you can read the tea leaves, and that's the case. The problem is, if you're at 3.3 or 3.4 unemployment, and a lot of people that still don't want jobs, wages will go up, and wage price spiral we definitely do not want. Jeffrey, 1 minute, close us out here. What's going to happen as we come at the end of September?
It's going to be weird, okay? Because you don't know what's going to happen in inflation. There are people predicting that it's going to jump up next year. Really, the only thing you got to do is you got to do your own research. You know, I mean, I write every day, but I never take what I read for the truth. I do my own research. And that's what people got to do, you folks, because that's how you find out the truth. Either that or you talk to Mark and he corrects you. Which is what I do. But really, seriously, you got to do your own research and never believe what you see in the papers.
You can't believe anything the mainstream media says because it's all propaganda. And that's why, we have shows like this where we can cut through that propaganda. But Jeffrey, again, thank you for your opinions. I love the back shoot there. It looks like Delray Beach.
Right.
Yeah, it's Delray Beach. One of my great cities where I spent a lot of time. I love Delray.
Well,
we love
like I told you, I got to go get an epidural for my back. So maybe next one I'll have a little baby in my hand.
Look, I want to close out with this. Jeffrey, again, thank you for the feedback. I love the commentary, and we're going to do it again next Thursday. I do want to close out with a little comment, folks. I want to actually thank Mike Shelton, who has an office. He has State Farm office next door to my brother's business here in Louisville. Mike's been kind enough to allow me to share a room so we could do the show for you this week, and we'll be doing it from here next week also. So everybody, I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend coming up. Have a relaxing Labor Day. We will keep up with all the political shenanigans going on. And folks, there's lots of them. And we'll be back with you next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we wish everybody a great weekend coming up. Jeffrey, safe weekend to you. And
you
folks,
too, Mark.
Thanks for watching this week, and we will see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.